So you've probably heard of Jelly Belly, right? Well, some pretty sour news just came out of their headquarters. And it turns out what's happening with this beloved candy company, it tells a much, much bigger story about a major economic shift happening in California. Let's get into it.
All right, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll cover the Jelly Belly news that got everyone talking. Then, we'll zoom out and look at the squeeze on the whole county. After that, we'll get into the why, a couple of really different takes on what's causing all this. We'll look at two competing visions for the future, and we'll wrap up with the big question: what does this all mean for California?
Okay, so first up, let's talk about the company at the heart of this story, Jelly Belly.
So 69, that's the number. And you know, it's easy to just see it as a statistic, but that's 69 people, 69 families in Fairfield, California, who just found out they're losing their jobs.
So what's the deal here? Well, it all goes back to late 2023. That's when Jelly Belly got bought out by Ferrara Candy Company. You definitely know them. They're the ones who make Nerds, Laffy Taffy, a ton of other big-name candies.
Now, the official reason they're giving is something called corporate consolidation. It sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple, really. Ferrara is basically just combining departments and moving these specific corporate jobs from California all the way over to their main headquarters in Chicago. It's all about cutting costs and making things more efficient after the buyout.
But here's a super important detail you need to know. If you're thinking, oh no, the Jelly Belly factory is closing, it's not. The factory itself, the warehouse, and yeah, that famous visitor center and tour, all of that is staying put in Fairfield. These layoffs are specifically hitting the corporate side of things. The offices, the administrative jobs, we're talking accountants, web developers, that kind of thing. Okay, so let's pull back and look at the bigger picture here. Because this thing with Jelly Belly, it's not some isolated incident. It's actually just the latest piece of bad news in what's been a really tough time for the local economy.
We're talking about Solano County, where the Jelly Belly factory is. And get this, since just last December, there have been over 1,000 layoff announcements in that one county. I mean, that is a huge hit in a really short period.
And this timeline really paints a picture of what's going on. Look at this list. It's not just candy companies. You've got Anheuser-Busch, the Budweiser guys, a big dry dock company, a Valero refinery. These are major, long-standing employers across totally different industries, and they're all cutting jobs one after another. It's a real pattern.
So whenever you see a wave of job losses like this, the big question is always why. And right now, there's a huge debate happening with two totally different explanations for what's really going on.
So you've got two camps. On one side, there's this simple business reason. People in this camp say, hey, this is just corporate consolidation. It's standard procedure when one company buys another. But then there's a much more political argument. This other side says, no, no, no. This is a symptom of a much bigger problem. This is the California exodus in action, and the state's own policies are forcing companies out. Now, folks who believe in that California exodus idea, like the analysis here from the California Globe, they point to a whole list of reasons. They're talking about high state and local taxes, a super complex regulatory environment, what they call business killing. They point to the highest gas prices in the country, a high minimum wage, and a ton of other mandates on employers. The argument is basically that the cost of doing business here has just gotten too high.
And it's not just an opinion piece. They back this up with data from places like Chief Executive Magazine, which, and this is pretty wild, has ranked California dead last, the absolute worst state for business for 14 years straight. 14!
Okay, so we've got this problem, right? Jobs are leaving. But what's the solution? Well, just like there are two different explanations for the problem, there are also two very different visions for the future.
So on one side, you have local economic leaders like Chris Rico. And his take is, yeah, this is painful, but it's also an opportunity. The vision here isn't about trying to cling to the old manufacturing jobs. It's about a pivot. It's about creating new, what they call higher value jobs. So what does that pivot actually look like? Well, the plan is to go all in on recruiting these newer high-tech industries. They want to build something they're calling a Solano aerospace cluster, bring in advanced manufacturing, and even get back into shipbuilding. The idea is to use local strengths, like having Travis Air Force Base right there, to build a totally new kind of economy. But then you have the other side, critics, like the Hoover Institution here. They're saying, hold on a minute. They argue that this pivot plan, while it sounds nice, doesn't actually fix the root cause of the problem. Their point is, you can attract all the new aerospace companies you want, but if you don't change the underlying business climate in California, those new companies are just going to run into the exact same issues with taxes and regulations that are pushing the old companies out. It's like pouring water into a leaky bucket.
And that brings us to the real takeaway here. What's happening in Solano County, it's not just about one county. It's really a preview, a test case for the entire state of California.
I mean, this place has become a perfect microcosm of this huge statewide debate. Do you focus on adapting, pivoting to new, shiny industries? Or do you have to first fix the fundamental, long-standing challenges of just doing business in California? It's a tug-of-war happening everywhere.
So it all boils down to this one massive question. Is what we're seeing in Solano County just the painful but necessary growing pains of shifting to a stronger, more modern economy? Or is it a flashing red warning light of much deeper, systemic problems to come? How we answer that question isn't just going to shape the future of one county. It could very well define the future of work for the entire state. Thanks for digging into this with us.